All right, so can everybody still hear me? I think something went on with the sound there, but can you all still hear me? Right, so can everybody still hear me? I think something went on with the sound there, but can you all still hear me? I'm hoping so, because we're super excited for tonight. So today we have Pastor Debbie with us. So some of you who have been with Encounter Youth for a while will remember her. She's amazing. She's part of counseling in our church, and she's just such a wonderful lady. She has such perspective and such a heart for teenagers. And so we're super excited to hear from you today, Pastor Debbie. We also have Pastor Lindi with us. So thank you so much for joining us, Pastor Lindi. Pastor Lindi is actually running our women's conference. So that is super exciting because she is here talking to us as well. So thank you for joining us, Pastor Lindi. We have Ebenezer with us. I'm sure all of you know her. She is super great. We're really excited to have you with us, Ebs. And also Tabs. Really great to have you here as well, Tabs. And then obviously myself. You should know me, but my name is Gracie. If you don't know me, we are super excited to have you. If you're not with Encounter Youth, welcome to our Crucial Talks. We are super excited to have you. And yeah, so I am going to be starting us off by reading a couple of definitions of terms that have been flying around during the conversation on gender-based violence. And so we're going to quickly be looking at those. So we're going to be bringing up the slides so that you guys can see and just discussing those with you. So our first definition is gender-based violence. So this is a term that has been going around, but what does gender-based violence actually mean? Gender-based violence is violence directed against a person because of their gender. Both women and men experience gender-based violence, but the majority of victims are women and girls. This was from the European Institute for Gender Inequality. The second term that we're going to be discussing is gender discrimination. So what is gender discrimination? Gender discrimination describes the situation in which people are treated differently simply because they are male or female, rather than on the basis of their individual skills or capabilities. This is from planinternational.org. Our third definition is gender inequality. Social process by which people are treated differently and disadvantageously, big word, under similar circumstances on the basis of gender. And this is from the Oxford Dictionary. So in our discussion, I want you guys to keep in mind that we are not undermining that both genders can face things like this. But today our focus is going to be on honing in on females, which are the more vulnerable people in this conversation. And so we are not saying that both genders don't face this. Our focus for today is simply going to be on the more vulnerable people, which are females at this stage. So we're going to be watching a video now, and I want you guys to be paying attention. Maybe you can be answering some of the questions that they are talking about in your own hearts, and really just listen out for the vulnerability that is depicted in this video. So we're going to be pressing play on that now.
This is going to be Put a Finger Down, female reality style. Please duet this, use the sound. I want to follow along. Put a finger down if you've been drugged. Put a finger down if your friends have been drugged. Put a finger down if you've been followed. Put a finger down if you walk to your car with your keys or pepper spray as a weapon. Put a finger down if you check your back seat and lock your doors the second you get inside your car. Put a finger down if you've been sexually touched inappropriately. Put a finger down if you did something with a man that you didn't want to do because you were scared to say no for your own safety. Put a finger down if you've experienced something really scary or even illegal and you were scared to report it because you didn't think anybody would listen. Put a finger down if when you hear or see a man running behind you, you freak out. Put a finger down if something bad happened to you and the men who were around that you thought would protect you didn't.
All right, so this is, it is a very touching video, and I know I can personally identify with some of the things that are mentioned there, and I'm sure a lot of people can on this call and our viewers. And so this is some of the stuff that we're going to be unpacking and addressing in our discussion today. So I'm going to be handing over to Tabs now just to discuss traditional roles and the traditional stereotypes around gender roles that society can place on us. So Tabs, I'm going to hand over to you for you to lead us in this section.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gracie. Sure. You know, sometimes I feel like looking back that our traditions sometimes perpetuate perpetuate some of the gender violence. Saying this, I remember one time one of my aunts was being abused by her husband, was being beaten by her husband. And when she got counsel with an elderly woman, and she said, no, you need to hang on, you need to stay there, that's your husband. You know, as a woman, you need to be able to endure, you need to be strong. So I was sitting there thinking, wow, so being a woman means that I can be beaten. Being a woman means I must just hold on, I must just endure the pain and push through. And looking back again at our tradition is that when you talk to a lot of Zulu guys, because I'm Zulu, when I would speak to a lot of Zulu guys, especially Zulu guys from KZN, and you talk about being a woman and you talk about gender roles, and they would say, no, a woman's duty is in the kitchen. A woman must just bear kids. The husband makes all the decisions in the house, and you must always listen to what your father says. But I've never heard people say, listen to what your mother says as well, you know, or listen to what your parents say. So that's the environment that I sort of grew up in outside of my own home, that people would say a man is above a woman across the board. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter who you are. So as a woman, your duty is to stay home. As a woman, your duty is to tend to the needs of everybody else and forget about yourself. But then coming into where I grew up with my parents, the roles are completely different. Where my dad, yes, he's the father, he's the head of the house, but he also cooked. My dad also cleaned. It was not just my mom's duty to do that or the girl's duty to do that. So I'm very grateful about that. I'm very grateful that I grew up in that environment. And just to take it to our panels as well, what do you think about gender-based violence and traditional roles? And I'll start with Pastor Debbie. Pastor Debbie? Okay, I think...
Sorry, I really struggled just to unmute. Sorry about that. Yeah, as I was growing up, there was that barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. You know, that was, and it was a joke. Pastor Lindi probably also heard that often. But I just praise God that we've married men who have not seen that. I mean, Pastor Mark will, if I cook, he washes dishes. If he cooks, I wash dishes. You know, we take turns. It's I'm working, he adds his time. So I'm really lucky. I remember I worked away from home, and when I would get home after work, it would be about 6:30 at night. And the one time my mom was around, and she was so mad at Mark because he was doing the washing, and she's like, no, but that's Debbie's job. And he'd say, but she's not at home. When will the washing get done? You know. And so my mom was brought up like that as well, where the women stayed at home and did this stuff. What I pick up from ladies who have got jobs that are equal to men's jobs, like auditors, computer analysis, and all those kind of things, is that their salaries are way below men's salaries because they're not valued the same. Even though they're doing the same job, they are not considered equal in the job places. And there's a sexual harassment where insinuations get made about them, and you don't dare speak about it, because if you speak about it, your job is on the line, because you're just the woman and they can replace you, but they probably can't replace the man. So it's really sad because women are really struggling to keep their identity in those places of work where they're working and they're making the same choices. Yeah, it's actually quite scary to see what women are facing out there. So I'm just lucky that we're having these conversations where we're saying, no, this must end. You know, we all, in God's sight, we're all equal, and we need to grasp that now and make a difference.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor Debbie. In God's eyes, we are all equal, and it's up to us to change our destiny and to change what we do next. And I will go next to Pastor Lindi.
Great. Yeah, so thank you so much, Youth, for creating this platform in the first place. I think it's about time that we, start having conversations about these things and normalizing them. Not, it's not a secret room conversation. It's actually a public conversation that both men and women, girls and boys need to have. So I think, going back to the traditions and culture has not served us well as women, to be honest. And for everyone who's a female in this group, we've been raised with the culture that women belong in the kitchen and with being homemakers. I think in our upbringing, probably speaking for my generation and probably Debbie's generation, that there wasn't even a vision to see women in the marketplace and stuff. So, which is very sad. So that's how I grew up, got married to Simon, and from the onset, we decided that we are going to change culture. We're going to change culture in so many things, and it's going to start with us. So as a matter of fact, I mean, we are both in the marketplace. I would cook, and even with the deciding to cook, it wasn't because a woman has to cook. It's because I'm a better cook than Simon. So I would cook, he would do the dishes, but he would hang around, me in the kitchen cutting vegetables for me and stuff. And he would iron and all that. And I remember the one time his parents were around his graduation, his honors graduation. His parents were around, his grandmother was around, and we're talking about the custodians of culture and traditions, right? And seeing him taking a tray and collecting all the dishes after we had the plates after we had eaten, and his grandmother gave me a look and asked me, what is he doing in the kitchen? Because the cling of dishes started to be heard in the dining room, and I saw the look on her face and I got so frightened. I said, no, he's not doing anything. He's just, gathering all the plates for me to wash them. I ran back to the kitchen and someone said, go back and sit down. Yeah. This is where we are going to show them how things are done in our home. And that was so profound and very important for me, because he took a stand as a man to say that I have, the final say. I have the powers to change culture in this home. And so that is very important. One of the things that Debbie touched on is in the marketplace. So, women are faced with so much barriers. I mean, when strategies are being made in the marketplace, women are not even counted in top positions as much. I mean, it's starting to change, but they considering things like, she's got children, she's married, she's, all those barriers and all that. And I think the culture is definitely penetrated, or has penetrated actually, in the marketplace as well.
Sure. Wow, thank you so much, Pastor Lindi. It shows that what I learned from that is that our men are the ones that need to protect us from, I like what you said, the custodians of tradition. Our brothers, our husbands, our friends are the ones that need to help us change this, because alone as females, we cannot. Let's move to Ebenezer. What do you think about cultures and traditions in all of this?
I'd like to first off with I'm very fortunate. I'm like being raised in a time where people are challenging these traditional norms that people have. Being the older sibling, I definitely have to oversee everything. There's definitely that thing of if this is not done, they come to you. And I think I'm fortunate in terms of the fact that, okay, I'm raised by a stay-at-home mom and a working father. And even though my mom is a stay-at-home mom, she's not expected to do every single thing. So we help her in the house. And also, you know, sometimes you'll find my dad ironing. Like, he'll do all the washing one day. And he loves ironing. And you see these things where they help each other. And I'm, you know, it's lovely to see that, because I remember, like, you know, in school, we're always told about these things. I personally have had interesting experiences in terms of traditional roles. I mean, I did rowing for a while. And I remember there's a time the shed, like, it was raining and the shed was muddy. And there's I don't know, it was just messed up. And I remember the girls were expected to clean. So all of us came in and were cleaning. And I remember the coach saying to me, "You'll make a terrible wife because you can't clean." And I was just there like, I'm cleaning, you just don't see it because of all this mess. But, you know, after that, I realized exactly where people's mindsets are in terms of women. And, you know, I remember I used to also get so annoyed when teachers used to make these statements of, "I need 2 strong boys to help me carry this." Because I remember those times that I wanted to volunteer, but because I'm not a boy, I can't help. You know what I mean? And, you know, for me, sometimes you look at the things and you be like, this thing's a light. I don't understand where you need strong boys for. Just say you wanted boys to carry it. But, you know, it is what it is. So, yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ebenezer. It shows that from a young person's perspective, it shows that these things are still happening, and they can be maybe very light, but they are there. And what we say and what we do really impacts us. So it's the point of changing our mindsets. And then I will hand over to Gracie asking the same questions, and she will continue with us and take us through the rest. Thank you, Gracie.
Cool. So with traditional roles and the way that people raise you and the expectations that they have on you, I think it's often very hard to see, because it's these little things that people say, like what Ebenezer was saying about, "I need 2 strong boys to carry this thing." And that was actually something that I had never thought about. But, you know, it's true. It's those little things that people say that make us feel like we have to fit into this cultural norm of, I'm a girl, he's a boy. We have these separate roles. One is lesser, one is better. And I think it's very difficult to break out of that. And I do think that often the male's role is seen as better. And I know as I am coming out of school and going into my job, I'm feeling the pressure of, do I get a job as good as my boyfriend's, or is he meant to be the one who earns the money? Or do I pursue a career, or am I just meant to pursue a good family? Is this something that I can pursue, or is that the man's job and I'm meant to, like, you know, make a beautiful home and I can have a secondary career? Like, it's these things that have become cultural norms, and that I then have to question and say, like, you know, am I going to fit into this cultural norm, or is a career going to be something that's actually very important to me? And so I think it's those questions that we need to ask to break out of those traditional norms and those boxes that people try to put us in. I don't know, Tabs, do you have any thoughts on traditional roles from your experience as well, if you want to share with us before we move on to our next question?
Yeah, I mean, with traditional roles, when I like a lot of history, and when you read about history, and I like a traditional history where women would stay home and men would go hunt. So the men, and I think this whole thing started there, where the man brings in the meat, they go out, and the woman stays at home, and they're homemakers, you know, and I think this is where it all started. But now there's no hunting. Now there's an economy that we need to think of. So tradition and culture need to change. You know, we are the ones who need to change it, not anybody else. And we are responsible for the future. We are responsible for our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come to change that. Yes, we need to know about what happened. If you don't know where you come from, you won't know where you're going. So we know where we come from. We know where things started. So it's up to us to change what needs to change. Thank you, Gracie.
So true. I love that, Tabs. And thank you to everyone who shared on this. So the question that we are going to be unpacking next is, what does GBV or gender discrimination look like in the teenagers' world and school? Because obviously this is something that we face in the world, but as a teenager, what do you think it looks like in their world and school and environment to be facing gender discrimination and gender-based violence? I think Pastor Debbie, if you can maybe kick us off with this, just answering that question.
Thanks, Gracie. Yeah, having two, well, they're young adults now, but two teens back a couple of years ago. I remember Ashley was being bullied by a young boy, and eventually he would jump on her back with her bag on her back. And I mean, he was awful. And I remember going to the teacher and complaining because Ashley had done it. And the teacher said, oh no, it's because he likes her that he's doing that. And I was just like, what? You know? And then you get the rating of girls like between 1 and 10. Are you a 5? Are you a 4? You know, boys, you're out there, you know, you do that too. You know, and it's acceptable. And who says what a girl is? You know, she's beautiful. And she's kind. You should be great. You should be rated on what kind of person you are, not on what you look like or how short your skirt is, your school skirt is, or whatever. You should be rated on if you're a nice person or not. I just remember sitting outside the school and seeing boys run past a girl and smack her skirt up, you know. And what about the derogatory names that the boys and even some girls call their friends, you know, and you watch videos and it's become a norm. It's become a norm to call your best friend. And sorry, I'm going to use the words because I think it'll be more shocking, is the bitch word. And a cow. I mean, by calling them that, you're turning them into animals, which makes them worthless or have no value. And I just remember being at Parktown Boys as well, where we did counseling. It was during the Christian Association, and while we were talking, that we spoke on I think it was sexuality, and we then went on to speak about pornography. And do you know that just about every boy in that room was struggling with pornography? And I remember the boys in my group were from the hostel, and I said to him, but, you know, what are you doing about it? And there's one kid said to me, you know what, I don't have a lot of airtime, so I make sure I don't have data, so I can't watch. But then my friends have data, and they encourage me to watch with them. So, I mean, these are some of the things that our teens are facing. And yeah, what teachers do and what teachers say, you know, I know that with the surname Titley, you know, the teachers would call my kids those names, you know, because, and I know even Pastor Mark had to deal with it at school, and it's not okay. When Keegan was in matric, he was the only virgin in his class. And so they put so much pressure on that he had to have sex with whoever, didn't matter, but he wasn't allowed to finish school being a virgin. And it just wasn't okay. And I think just by speaking to our kids, by telling them that they are different, you know, it's educating our teens. So it's quite scary what's out there.
Thank you so much for sharing, Pastor Debbie. It's so great to have a parent's perspective on this, and also someone who's been involved in youth ministry. You then have that added perspective. Pastor Lindi, I don't know if there's anything that you can share with us as well from a parent's perspective or from your own perspective, just on how gender-based violence and gender discrimination is affecting our teenagers today.
Sure. You know, I think, both those things are taught, they are modeled. In homes, they are modeled in society, so they don't just happen in a vacuum, right? So discrimination is taught in homes, in society. It starts with you can't play with cars as a girl. Who said so? You know, you can't play with dolls as a boy. But who said so? Like, I do believe that God has created men with a nurturing thing as well. Otherwise, we wouldn't have dads that love their children and, who are able to change nappies and stuff. And so even, like what Ebenezer mentioned, can two strong boys come and lift up something? It's discrimination, and it's all those undertones that happens in the home structure. It's those undertones that happen in the school structure. In the school structure, you have adults obviously being teachers who are actually perpetuating, those undertones. So I think it's a blind spot that we all need to be aware of, even as we raise children, even as we disciple youth, that, but you can't say that just because, she's a girl. And, the gender-based violence as well at school is there. Everybody knows about it. Where do these kids get it from? It comes from their communities. It comes from, home environment. And it's sad to say that, when the home structure is broken, school structure should provide at least an environment where there is learning, where you can actually call out the boys and say, you're not supposed to do that. But unfortunately, school system is also, a structure that is perpetuating, the gender-based violence. I mean, I grew up in an environment where a boy like twist your arm. Oh no, he likes you, so don't complain because you are being liked. You are a popular girl. I was bullied and beaten up by a boy every single day, and I wouldn't understand, why are you doing this? And I would hear, oh, but he likes you. And I said, no, I don't like him, and beating me up is not liking me. So, and reporting that to teachers was a no-go area. I told my sister about it, who, she sorted out this boy. But I think, things like those, how boys treat young girls at school, that is not showing love. And these are the things that are taught in a home structure. These are the things that, in a community, we should see gaps in families, that, okay, this family is broken. How do I step in to teach this boy that doing what you are doing to that girl, it doesn't communicate love, that is abusive. As well as, just equipping girls to say, no, you are abusing me, this is not love. So I think maybe we'll dwell into that in other questions, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Pastor Lindi. I really appreciate you sharing, and just brings such great perspective as well, and especially from a parent. So thank you so much. Ebenezer, I don't know, you're a teenager, so maybe you can tell us, I know you said you are privileged to come from a home where you're not experiencing that too much, but maybe you can say how you're experiencing this at school and with your friends, and just what gender-based violence and discrimination means to you, and how you're experiencing that as a teenager today.
I think Pastor Debbie mentioned quite a few good points in terms of, the rating system in school. The rating system has been a normal thing. I remember our school, the boys had a list of the hottest girls in the grade. And, if you didn't make the top 10 list, you'd watch girls cry. And, there's always that thing. And there's also that thing of in schools, they'd rate girls from different schools and be like, yeah, in this school they have hotter girls, and in this school they have, and the process of subjecting women, basically. Just as Pastor Lindi and Pastor Debbie have said, the thing of, no, he likes you. When you're being hurt, he likes you. And for some reason, we're made to believe that that is the thing. And I think that's also what leads into people, like girls, allowing themselves to be in toxic relationships, because they're made to believe that this form is how guys show their love or affection. I think for me as a teenager, I think I've seen it in different ways. You know, you see, I remember I had a friend who experienced a really terrible thing. She was sexually assaulted at school. And I remember how when she spoke up about the situation and she went to the teachers, she was bullied for it. Mm. And the reason being is because the boy was a popular kid. And so when he got expelled and everything, she went through hell. I remember, she would cry a lot, would be in the bathroom would spend our breaks in the bathroom, basically. And it was not a pleasant experience for her, you know what I mean? Because of such situations, she was told comments like, why would he choose you out of everyone? Mm. You know, and why it seemed, it was a way that they really tore down her self-esteem and the way she viewed herself. And it's still affecting her now. I think also things with derogatory terms that are used for women or girls, especially at school. I mean, if you're seen to have a group of friends that are predominantly male, you're seen as loose. You know what I mean? I've had to experience that. I've experienced bullying in that home for quite a while, actually. I did a certain sport and I had predominantly male friends. And I remember that was the main comment that was made. I was always called, I won't say the words, but you know, I was called quite a lot of colorful words. And, you know, just that on its own really just makes people feel a certain way. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but, you know, experiencing things like that doesn't end there, because also, like, as girls, we grow up watching certain types of movies, and we're made to believe that love comes in this form. As I mentioned with, like, you know, he bullies you, you know, he loves you. And we're made to believe that, like, toxic relationships are, you know, are good. And that's why you get situations where, like, you know your friend's being hurt, but she stays. And I think that's, in my way, that's how I've seen it happen. And also, you know, people looking down on what a girl says. So if she doesn't appreciate what a guy did, and she'd be like, no, I didn't appreciate you doing this, the main question a guy would start off with is it that time of the month? Or are you on your period, you know? And in a way, it kind of makes it seem as if what you're feeling is invalid. And it doesn't help with anything, you know what I mean? It seems as if women are just over dramatic about the way they feel. So yeah.
Thank you, Ebenezer. I appreciate that perspective. It's very valuable for us to hear your experience on that. And I definitely identify with some of what you were saying. Taz, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this that you want to quickly share with us about this as well.
Yeah, thank you, Gracie. Definitely. I've also experienced gender-based discrimination, and I remember one time I was sexually assaulted in a taxi. I was a teenager and I was actually going to our youth group, and this guy who was sitting next to me, I was sitting in the front seat, and this guy was sitting next to me was busy touching my thighs, and I had a skirt on, and I looked at the driver for help, and I said to him, please help me, like, what's going on? I'm like, I felt so defenseless, and the driver just looked and smiled and said, but you're wearing a short skirt. And I was defeated. I didn't know what to do. I was thinking of even just getting off the taxi, turning back home. I didn't even have enough money to actually get back home at that moment, because we had transport from our youth group that would take us back home. And I've never forgotten that day. Unfortunately, I got help from somebody, but I didn't get help from church, you know, because I remember, because I'm a pastor's kid, so being at church as well, I need to be an example. So such things shouldn't happen to you. You know, that's the mentality that was there. And I think as the church and as youth leaders, we need to teach our teenagers the right things, teach our teenagers to speak up, and that they will be helped with no judgment. Because I was afraid of being judged, being the pastor's kid, being told every day that I need to lead by example, even though I'm not even in the leadership, but I had to be that person to be seen as the leader. And even at school, at primary school, we would, on Wednesdays, half of the day, boys would go out to do some technical work at Technicon or something, and I would be, us as girls would stay back at school and do knitting and sewing. And I would be like, but I want to be out there. I'm that person who loves gardening, who loves, tools and stuff. But I didn't enjoy it at all. And there were boys who would say, but I want to be there with the girls, and learn how to knit, but we were not allowed because that was for girls and working with tools was for boys. And Gracie, how do you feel about that question?
Yeah, I think definitely there's been some things that have come out from all of you speaking that I have definitely been able to identify with. One of the things is girls being sexualized instead of valued, and my sexuality being valued more than my character and my personality and who I am, and how we can often feel less than everyone else if we aren't some boy's plaything, because that is where our value is perceived, is because we are some boy's lady, we are some boy's plaything, and that is where our value is perceived to be. Feeling like we're less because we don't have a voice. I don't know about you guys, but as a young female, I feel like that is even more of a problem, because females often feel like they don't have a voice and like they can't speak up. But if you're young and you're a female, I think there's that much more pressure on you, because as a teenager, you often feel like people are going to disregard what you say anyway. But then you're a young female, and so you have two things against you. And so I think that's often why people don't speak up, or why when they do speak up, people just disregard what they're saying because they're young and they're female. And I think that is definitely something that needs to change. And definitely something that I've experienced is I don't always feel like I can speak up because I don't feel like I'm always going to be heard. And I think there's no excuse for abuse, for violence, for discrimination. If you don't ever have to accept rough affection, like what you guys were saying, oh, he hurt you because he loves you. And I've heard this so many times, like, no, he doesn't know how to express his emotions, so he's going to hurt you to show you that he likes you. That is not showing affection. I'm sorry, rough affection is not affection. And so I think, yeah, that's definitely something I could relate to. But I think also, like what Ebenezer, you were saying, is rejection teaches us to keep quiet, because like that friend of yours who spoke up and she was rejected after that, that's teaching her to keep quiet. And so I think as people, when someone comes forward and expresses this, something that's happened to them or this fear, we need to be an accepting community around them that hears them and understands them and is there for them, because rejection teaches them to keep quiet. Also, what Ebenezer, you were saying about being judged based on the time of the month, I think that just shows such disregard for my feelings. My feelings are valid, whether it's that time of the month or not. My feelings are always valid, and maybe that time of the month just helps me to speak up. Maybe that I'm just speaking up at last. So I think definitely that's something that I've experienced is, oh, it's that time of the month, so we can't take anything she says seriously, or she's just overreacting because it's that time of the month. And maybe we're reacting because we actually have the confidence to say something. So yeah, I think those are some of the things that I could definitely identify with. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing, everyone. I'm going to hand over to Tabs for the next section of our discussion.
Wow, thank you, Gracie. Certainly, love shouldn't hurt. Love shouldn't hurt me physically. And here's a question. I will start with Debbie, Pastor Debbie, if you can answer this question. What should be our response as truth seekers and being advocates for the vulnerable? What should be our response as truth seekers and being advocates for the vulnerable? Pastor Debbie.
So I want to start off with reading Proverbs 31, verse 8 to 9. We actually read that in the sermon today as well. It says, "Speak up for those who cannot for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Speak up for the poor and helpless and see that they get justice." And so the big word that keeps coming up in that scripture says we need to speak up. And that's one of the things that we need. We need every one of us. The government might put in all these wonderful, no gender-based violence. We need to stop this. And it's good, it's great, but we have to do it. We have to stand up. We have to be the ones to call them up, call people out. If you're at school and your friend's making some rude joke about a girl or using foul language, even though he's your friend, you actually need to call him out. I know it's easy to call out somebody else who's in a group and they're not your friend. It's easy to do that, but you actually need to, when it's your friends, you need to call them up. You need to say, that's not cool. You need to go apologize, or I think we also need to give, especially as a church, we really need to give people a safe place to speak up. Sometimes boys are forced to maybe watch pornography, sorry, pornography and stuff like that. So we actually need to give them a place where they can come, where they know that whatever they speak about, no one else will hear about, that it's safe. And girls who have been abused, touched, or violated, they need to know that there's a safe place as well. So I really think that's one of the biggest things that we need. Also, sitting around tables at home, we need to be having this conversation with our kids, and you need to be having it with your friends. Chat, talk about it. We need to educate our girls about who they are, what their value is. They are not just a sex object, but there's so much more that they have. And then we need to teach our boys from little to respect, and to how do you speak to people. We talk with respect. We don't mock, we don't criticize, but we speak kind, and we are gentle, and respect is big. So I think those are, for me, would be the biggest thing, is to speak out. The biggest thing is to say, because we have to do it. The government's done it. I mean, if you look at apartheid, who brought the change? It was the teens. And I think this gender-based violence, the teens can do this. You can start doing it in your classrooms. You can start doing it with your friends. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Debbie. And I like what you said, that it's not just about teaching girls to speak up, but also our boys as well. There's take a girl child to work day, but there's no take a boy child to work day. So there needs to be a balance. I definitely agree with that. Pastor Lindi, how can we be advocates for those who are vulnerable?
Sure, I think, probably similar to Debbie, I think my thing is voice. I think Gracie spoke about that. We have a voice, use your voice. I like what Paul says to Timothy, let not anyone despise you because you are young. In school, or in schools, in your community, in your home, use your voice to speak up. Sometimes the fire is thrown back at girls that, but what did you do to make him, come for you? How were you dressed up? How did you behave, and all that? And nobody sits a boy, child, or a man down to say, how did you behave? What did you do? What was your action? Account for your actions. So, I would like you to encourage you to be bold. Speak. It's not what you have done, it's what has been done to you, even with those sexual undertones, like, oh, you're beautiful. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, then it's wrong. You shouldn't feel uncomfortable when somebody says you look beautiful, but in the way that they look at you, in the way that they say it makes you feel uncomfortable. Speak up. And I know that this happens in schools as well, where male teachers do this to children. I am, a victim of that, like, teachers making advances at me. And what helped me to come out was to speak up. And I didn't even think about, but you are wearing a short dress, and all those things. So speak up. And then to, just friendships around, like you have, in law, there's something that's called a duty to tell. You have a duty to tell. When you see something that has been done to your friends or by your friends, degrading women or, behaving inappropriately, you have a duty to tell. I am so proud of my son. And I think Simon mentioned this recently, that, he had a picture on his profile picture of, a woman dressed up inappropriately. And after the class call, he actually called him separately to call him out and say, you've got to remove that picture down. And I know that this, is very difficult for many teens because you want to be included. You want to be part of the group, right? But, there are ways of doing it. The ways of doing like Limo did it, take the person aside, call them privately and call them out. And in that way, they won't shame you and stuff. And yeah, you've got power. So I do think that, we need to really provide a safe space from homes. We need to provide safe spaces, for teens at church as well. So when we talk about, children obey your parents, and we teach our children to obey authority, we need to also teach them on how to speak against authority when it's doing them wrong. We need to tell them that you've got power to call out sin. When we are telling you to obey authority and respect, adults, it doesn't mean that they do, you allow them to do wrong on you and you don't speak up because you have to obey. So I think we need to empower our children as well to say that when this is done is wrong and you need to speak up, even if it's authority, even if it's person in power, because we know that it's not easy to speak against the person who is in power. But, being able to use our voice is a very powerful tool.
Wow, so much wisdom, such wisdom. Thank you so much, Pastor Lindi. I'm not even going to ruin that by adding on it. Spot on, straight to the point, and that's exactly what we need to do. We need, and big ups to Lemo as well for speaking up and calling someone out and not shaming the person. I think that's very important as well, calling someone to the side and speaking to them. Ebs, what do you think? What are your views?
First of all, the whole thing of, the way guys express their love and stuff, I think we should teach, it should be an important thing in schools, also at home, that we're taught better ways to express ourselves and more positive ways of doing so, ways that are less violent and, harmful to one another. I think, also as an ally, not asking questions that make the victim feel as if they brought it onto themselves. Questions like, what were you wearing? It makes it seem as if it's this person's duty to make sure that they're taking care of someone else's self-control. And, I can't be expected to, control you in the way, because we all have a duty to look after ourselves. I think, speaking up is a really important thing, and creating a space where people feel comfortable to do that, protecting the victim. I think also, because I know with like some teenagers, there's that thing of he's an adult, so you don't want to say anything against them, and I think creating a space where teenagers are able to say it, instead of feeling like, I'm being disrespectful for voicing out how I feel. Or, I know it's even worse when it's a family member, it's that thing of you're disrespecting the family, you're bringing shame to the family name. And I think our focus should not be on our image, but should be solely on, being human to one another, understanding each other's pain. Empathy, I think, is more important. I think also we really just need to trust in God and have discernment. We need the spirit of discernment as well in, situations like this, where, you're faced with things and you don't know, sometimes you haven't experienced it, so you don't know exactly what would help. But I think if we ask God to help us, we'll be able to be blessings towards others and help them, especially during like difficult times. I think just mainly dealing with people's emotions and the way they express themselves, because, it's a big thing where people feel as if me getting myself help, means that I'm insane, I'm crazy. You know what I mean? And people need to feel as if it's okay to get help. It's okay for that to happen. It's okay for you to go to a psychologist if you need to. You know what I mean? As long as you're taking care of your mental health. Because I think most of these things are effects of what's happening on the inside. You know what I mean? So if the moments of anger where women are violently hurt, you know what I mean? I think it has to do with anger. And, finding positive ways of, getting rid of that anger would be really helpful in terms of our society and the way we live. So, yeah.
Lovely.
Sure. Wow. Thank you so much, Ebs. And we need to come to that point definitely where we are willing to go out there and actually get help and seek help. What my view is also, we need to be able to speak up. We need to be able to sound an alarm when something is wrong. I like what Pastor Lindi said, that even when it's authority that is doing what is wrong, we need to be able to call that out, but we need to do it with respect. We still need to respect authority. We need to do it in a way that is not going to shame anyone, in a way that it's not going to make that person retaliate in such a way that you end up being hurt as well. So I'm going to throw the same question to Gracie, and she will take us through the last segment of our discussion. Gracie?
Cool. So I think what should our response be as truth seekers and advocates for the vulnerable? I think God has called us to be set apart. And as Christians, he didn't call us to fit into society. He called us to stand out. And the Bible says that we are in this world, but we are not of this world. We do not have to accept what everybody else is accepting as normality. We have to step up and stand out for what is right. We have to call people out about when they are wrong. We have to be willing to do this and to stand up for what is right, to stand up for the vulnerable. And I think if we look at the life of Jesus, we see him doing this often. He didn't just walk on by the vulnerable, walk on by the sick, the people who were marginalized. He stood up for them and he sat with them and he spent time with them. And I think we need to understand that this is going to cost us, and there may be times where we lose friends and we lose popularity, and we don't really fit in, but that's okay because we were never called to fit in. And as Christians and as people who want to see a difference, we need to hold people accountable to see that difference come to be. And the Bible speaks about speaking the truth in love. So that means saying these things, but saying them with an attitude of love. And I think this is where Jesus got the balance absolutely perfectly, as with everything with Jesus. But he always was speaking the truth. He never allowed someone to do something because it was more comfortable for them, but he never spoke it in a harsh, unkind way that they made them feel horrible. And so, like Pastor Lindi, your example was Lemo. He did it in an honoring way. He did it outside of the group and he spoke to that person privately. And so that was kind, that was with love, but he did call him out on what he was doing wrong. And so I think that's what we need to do as Christians and as teenagers, is stand up for what is right, because we are called to be set apart, not like everyone else around us. So we're going on to our final question for this evening. And that is, what advice can you give as a parent or youth or young adult in response to this issue? So from your context, from your viewpoint, what advice can you give to people watching for how to deal with gender-based violence and discrimination, how to deal with those feelings that it evokes in you, and how to deal with standing up for people who are experiencing this? Pastor Debbie, I think if you can kick us off.
Thanks, Gracie. So I actually asked this young lady this morning after the sermon. She sent me a message to say that she's angry at men. Please, can she chat? But we did it on WhatsApp because her family was around. But listen to what she said, and I asked if I could use this. My dad was only physically abusive. My first boyfriend was physically and attempted to murder me. The fear has stopped me from having a functional social life, and subsequently I've gained a lot of weight by the sedentary lifestyle and emotional eating. I mean, how hectic is that? So sometimes it just takes one bad experience, one traumatic experience to change your life. That's what happened to me. I had one bad experience and it has changed who I am. And so my advice to parents and to teens as well is that you must know what you want. Girls, when you go on a date, know how far you're prepared to go. You need to know what is it that you're expecting out of this date. Let me tell you, the boy that you're going with, he knows what he wants. And so if you are going on a date, you need to know what you want. And so when he pushes your boundaries, know your boundaries as well. So when he pushes that boundary, you know, I'm not going there, because you've already made up your mind. Because if you have no boundaries and you go to this thing, to this date, on this date, he's going to push you further. He's going to get more from you than what you were expecting to give. Also, I tell girls to know find out what you're worth. If you know that you're worth being loved and being treated well and being treated kindly, you're not going to let people just bully you and say what they like. And if they did, you know that you can walk away, that will not affect you in the long run. The other thing I think is you must make the difference. You must speak up. You must say, find somebody to talk to. One thing that works very well is if you must have a good connection with your family, with your mom and your dad, so that if you find yourself in a bad situation and you're not at home, you can send a WhatsApp and say, I need help. If you're being bullied into maybe having sex with somebody, you can actually send a message saying, can you phone me? Or even to a friend, come phone me, tell me that I need to get home, I need to come home, and that you're coming to fetch me. Make sure that you know that there's a way out. I tell girls all the time, I'm actually spending time with a young lady at the moment who she's going on this date and she's had one bad experience already. And I said, tell your mom where you're going. Tell your mom where this date is. And I know that we're saying, it's not my responsibility. If I dress a little bit provocatively, it's not my fault what he suspects or what he thinks. You know what? While we're still dealing with this gender-based violence stuff, we actually have to take responsibility for ourselves. We actually need to cover up and dress so that we are not causing the guy to have other ideas. We have to dress well. And then tell, like when you're chatting to the guy, make sure that he knows what this relationship is. Make sure that he knows what you want out of this relationship. And if it's not even a relationship, if it's just in the beginning, if it's just a date and it's just finding out, from there you say, I'm not interested in a physical relationship, not yet. I'm not there yet. I'm too young. That's not my values. But you actually need to speak up right from the front so that he knows where he stands. And I spoke to a young lady the other day as well who was driving along, and you all spoke about this age thing. And it's so true, because this young lady was driving, she was going to a shopping mall, and this guy was trying to jump in front of her. So she hooted and she ended up going in front of him, and he followed her to the shopping mall. And when she got out, he was waiting for her. Luckily for her, there were some car guards that she had walked to and she had spoken to before this guy got to her. And then when he got to her, he's like, yeah, you're not my age. You must have respect. And she just said, I know I'm not your age, but there's rules. You need to obey the rules. Now, I know that's a bit dodgy and it's a bit scary, but at the same time, she said, I don't care if you're old. I don't care. There's rules. We need to stick to the rules. We need to obey rules. And so we need to speak up. We have to break the silence. There's a culture, even in Parktown Boys, there's a culture of silence. And if one boy right at the beginning spoke about the abuse that was happening at the school, it wouldn't have carried on for years and years and years. It would have been broken because somebody would have said something. And so the biggest thing is that we have to speak up. You have to find somebody. And if that person doesn't listen to you, you go to the next person and you speak to the next person until somebody takes you serious. We need to speak up. That's the only way to stop that.
That's so good. Thank you, Pastor Debbie. I really appreciate those stories and that perspective on how you see we can make a difference and can change this. Pastor Lindi, I don't know if there's anything that you would like to add to that as well.
Yeah, I see we are out of time. But just quickly, probably two groups of people: the parents who are watching with their teens right now and happen to be, Christian parents. Would like to encourage you to, not be reactive when our kids are sharing stories and something. Sometimes, they sharing their friends' stories to see how we will react, and based on how you react, it's going to shut them down, or it's going to open the channels of communication. So if you can just watch how you react, like, open, make the home environment open enough for, our teens, your teens, to have an honest conversations, and then you will know what they're going through, and you can even be able to get into the subject of when a stranger does this, or even not a stranger, when a family member does this, touches you inappropriately, that is not okay. You need to speak up. So I think just creating a safe environment at home where it's non-judgmental, non-reactive in a negative way, it will create room for our children to speak freely. And then secondly, just for perhaps teens who are watching a part of this conversation, and they're coming from homes where, things are totally different. It's not what maybe, Omolemo and Zinzi are experiencing at home. They've got Christian parents who are open. And, it's a bit tricky. Please reach out to, this adult group and teen groups to speak up and to speak to them. I know that it can be scary, and just generally to all the girls, like, there is nothing we can do more or less for Christ to love us. Christ loves us anyway. And I know that sometimes when we go overboard in catching attention of men, it's because it comes from a place of brokenness. And so, like Ebenezer said, if you know that there's something broken in you, you need to, identify it and expose it. Otherwise, that crack is going to open wider and wider until it causes damage.
Thank you, Pastor Lindi. That really speaks to our hearts, and I really appreciate that. So thank you. Ebenezer, do you have any final thoughts on this?
I don't want to say too much, but I think I agree with everything that's been said. I think for, like, with situations happening now, I think what would really help is if parents had open, situations with their children where, if, how there's that thing of people dating behind their parents' back. And, there's that thing, and that's where certain things happen, and, it's not really spoken about. And I think if people, like teenagers and parents, can have that relationship where they're free enough to say, I'm going on a date with whoever, as Pastor Debbie said, or this is happening. And, because most times things will happen, but because they know that they're doing it illegally, it's not allowed by their parents, they'll keep quiet. And, you won't want to voice it out because you're scared that you'll get in trouble. And I think if that is eliminated, we can get a lot of people just sharing about what they actually experience.
So good, Ebenezer. I think these conversations and this openness is what needs to happen in all spheres of life, at school, at home, with our friends. And I think openness and communication is how this thing is going to be solved. Tabs, I don't know if you have any final thoughts before I close this off.
Yeah, thank you, Gracie. And not to repeat what everybody has said, my plea is to parents especially, that parents, when your children are speaking to you, listen to understand what they're saying and not to respond. Because most of the time we already have an answer when someone is talking, and I understand that with parents, you are scared and you're trying to protect your child, but you opening up to your children, it doesn't mean that it's that you are a weaker parent. It doesn't mean that you are you're gonna make your child go out there and do whatever they want, or they're gonna lose respect for you. But open up to your children, speak truth to your children. And ladies and gentlemen, we are responsible. We need to work together. Divided we fall, together we stand. So yeah, that's my piece. Thank you so much, Gracie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. So I think my final words on this is know who you are and your value, and hold people to that standard. So you have to know first, and then you can hold other people to that same standard that you have of yourself. Treat yourself and those around you with the value that God sees in you. And so this goes for everyone. Treat those around you with the value that God sees. Have these talks, be intentional, speak up, and hold people accountable for their actions. It is our right to hold people accountable for the actions that are affecting people around us. And finally, this talk is for everyone, ladies and men, teenagers, parents, everyone. This talk is for everyone. Even if you are not violent, even if you are not the person who is discriminating against women, then let this inspire you to hold others accountable for when they are. And so, yeah, I just want to encourage you, everyone who's watching this, this is for you. Even if you aren't discriminating, then hold other people accountable who are discriminating. So yeah, thank you so much to everyone who's been joining us, to our viewers, to Pastor Debbie, Pastor Lindi, Ebenezer, and Tabs. I so appreciate all of your perspectives, and we are so happy that we were able to do this talk together. So I think if everyone can just close their eyes, I'm going to close in prayer, and then I think we'll be done. Lord Jesus, I thank you for this time together. I thank you for these conversations where we can discuss hard topics, discuss things that are hurting us and that are prevalent in our society, Lord God. And I just pray that it is through these topics and through these discussions, Lord Jesus, that change would come about, and that we would see your will in our societies and our communities. I pray that it would be your standard that we all hold ourselves to, Lord Jesus. I pray for confidence in everyone who's watching this to stand up against those who are discriminating and who are the perpetrators of gender-based violence, Lord God. I just pray for your blessing upon everyone who's been watching this. I thank you for this time together, and I thank you that you are on the move. Even in tough situations like this, you are moving, and you have a plan and a purpose. So, Lord Jesus, I thank you for this time. I pray for your blessing upon everyone in Jesus' name. Amen. So to anyone who's been watching this and who would like support, we've posted a number in the comments, so you can contact that number. Otherwise, the first link in our description, please click on that and somebody will be in contact with you who can support you and encourage you. If you are part of Encounter Youth, please contact one of your leaders and they will be happy to walk with you. Otherwise, make use of that first link or the number that has been posted in the comments. But thank you so much for watching. Please join us again in about a month's time for our next crucial conversation where we unpack difficult topics, and discuss tough questions. But thank you so much to the 5 of you who have joined us here. We appreciate you, and I hope everyone has a good evening.